After reviewing all the evidence presented before this court, you showed no remorse for your actions, and today justice must be served. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
Life in prison? You can't do that to me. I'm just a...
She laughed when the police arrived. She mocked the officers, even asked one if he knew who her father was, but within hours, that laugh would vanish, replaced by the trembling voice of a teenage girl realizing that action have consequences. This is the case of a 17-year-old, known online as the Teenage Karen, believed the law couldn't touch her. But when the evidence surfaced and the judge read her sentence, she broke down in tears, a moment that shocked everyone in the courtroom. Don't scroll away. This is one of the most disturbing teenage crime cases caught on camera. Subscribe now to uncover the stories others try to hide. Tell us in the comments why you'd rather look away from the truth. It began in a quiet neighborhood in Austin, Texas, in early 2024. The suspect, identified as Emily Lawson, was an outspoken teen known for her aggressive behavior and viral social media rants. She had built an online following by posting clips of herself yelling at teachers, store employees, and even police officers. Her videos had titles like, "You can't touch me, I'm a minor," and "Cops can't arrest kids." Those same words would later haunt her in court. Emily lived with her 5-year-old girlfriend, Sandra Hill, a single mother, raising a 6-year-old boy named Noah. At first, neighbors thought the relationship was stable, but behind closed doors, there was chaos. Friends later told investigators that Emily was jealous, controlling, and verbally abusive toward Sandra. Several times, people nearby heard screaming from the apartment. One witness said, "It was always the same, the little boy crying, the mom begging her to stop." No one called police until it was too late. On the night of April 12, 2024, a 911 call came from the apartment complex. The caller reported hearing loud banging and a woman yelling, "Stop, please stop." When officers arrived, Emily opened the door with a smirk. She told them nothing was wrong and that it was just a loud argument. But behind her, on the living room floor, officers noticed a small body covered by a blanket. 6-year-old Noah wasn't breathing. Paramedics rushed in, but it was already too late. The boy had severe head trauma, bruising consistent with repeated strikes from a blunt object. The medical examiner would later confirm that the weapon was the household hammer. Emily showed no emotion as police began questioning her. When asked what happened, she shrugged and said, "He wouldn't stop crying, so I taught him a lesson." Officers on scene said she laughed while being handcuffed. Her exact words were chilling. "You can't arrest me, I'm just 17. At the station, detectives began piecing together the events leading to the killing. Sandra, the mother, was hysterical and in shock. She told investigators that Emily had lost control after an argument about money. Sandra had left briefly to buy groceries. When she returned, she found her son lying motionless on the floor. She screamed for help, but Emily calmly walked to the kitchen, washed her hands, and said, "It's your fault for letting him talk back to me." The case quickly spread online. The clips of Emily's arrest went viral on TikTok and YouTube, showing the teenage girl smiling at cameras, flipping her hair and repeating, "You can't do this to me." Commenters called her the most arrogant teen in America. News outlets dubbed her the Teenage Karen. While her lawyer insisted she was suffering from mental health issues, prosecutors painted a different picture. But a manipulated young woman who thought she was above the law. Police released body cam footage from the arrest, showing officers struggling to keep their composure as she taunted them. One officer later said, "I've never seen anything like it." She had zero remorse. It was like she thought she was starring in her own show. But reality was closing in fast. The hammer was found in the apartment sink, covered in fingerprints. Forensics matched Emily's DNA on the handle and Noah's blood on her shirt. Her phone contained disturbing voice recordings and messages where she joked about teaching kids discipline. Investigators said the evidence was overwhelming. By the time the trial began, To public outrage was at its peak. Thousands of people filled the courthouse steps, demanding justice for Noah. Inside the courtroom, cameras captured every second of her changing attitude, from smug confidence to visible panic as the evidence played. But nothing could prepare the audience for her reaction when the verdicts came in. Music cue fades, in low tension rising. She thought the law couldn't touch her, but she was wrong. Terribly wrong. And in the next part, you'll hear exactly what happened inside that courtroom, how her smirk disappeared, and how one sentence from the judge made her crumble in front of everyone. The courtroom was packed, every seat taken, cameras rolling, reporters standing shoulder to shoulder. Emily Lawson entered wearing an oversized orange jumpsuit. Her hair was tied back, her wrists cuffed, but her attitude, still defiant as deputies led her to her seat. She glanced at the crowd and smirked. Someone in the audience shouted, "Murderer!" and she smiled like she enjoyed the attention. To her, it was still a show. To everyone else, it was the trial of a monster. The prosecution began by showing the evidence collected from the apartment, the photos of bloodstains on the wall, the hammer found in the sink, and the child's autopsy report. The silence in the courtroom was heavy. Even the defense attorney looked shaken. The prosecutor's voice trembled as she held up the small shirt Noah was wearing that night. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, "this is what happens when ego replaces empathy. This is what happens when someone believes they are above the law." Emily showed no emotion. She played with her nails. At one point, she whispered something to her lawyer and laughed quietly. The judge stopped the proceedings and warned her that any more outbursts would have consequences. Still, she seemed unbothered, like she was waiting for her next viral clip. Then came the testimony that changed everything. Sandra Hill, the victim's mother and Emily's girlfriend, took the stand. She looked exhausted, her hands shaking as she spoke. "I trusted her," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought she cared about me, about my son. I left them alone for 20 minutes. When I came back, he was gone." The courtroom fell silent. Reporters later said even the jury looked visibly moved. Sandra described Emily's rage that night, how she had thrown things, screamed, and accused her of choosing the boy over her. "She said I made him disrespect her," Sandra said. "She said he needed to learn who was in charge." Tears streamed down her face as she recalled running to her son's lifeless body. "He was only 6, she whispered. "He never hurt anyone." The prosecution rested its case, confident that the evidence spoke for itself, but the defense tried to shift the narrative. Emily's lawyer claimed she suffered from intermittent explosive disorder, a mental condition causing sudden bursts of aggression, they argued. She had been using substances that impaired her judgment, but when the prosecutor played clips of Emily's social media posts, videos where she laughed about not being able to be arrested because she was a minor, the courtroom gasped. The footage destroyed any sympathy the defense tried to build. In one clip, she said, "The cops can't touch me. I'm 17, I'll be out in a week." The prosecutor paused the video and turned to the jury. "This is not a moment of madness," she said. "This is arrogance. This is a young woman who thought she was untouchable." During closing arguments, the tone shifted. Emily began to look anxious. Gone was the smug smirk. Her hands shook slightly as the prosecutor described the brutal details of the attack. "She hit him once," the prosecutor said, "but she didn't stop. She struck him again, and again, and again. This was not an accident. This was rage turned into murder." The audience could barely breathe. One juror wiped away tears. When the defense stood for their final remarks, they asked the jury to see the child behind the crime. They pleaded for understanding, claiming Emily was a victim of neglect, online influence, and poor mental health. But their words couldn't erase what everyone had seen and heard. The damage was irreversible. After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The courtroom fell silent. Emily leaned back in her chair, whispering something under her breath. When the foreperson stood, everyone waited. The judge asked, "Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?" The foreperson nodded. "We have, Your Honor." The words echoed through the room. "We find the defendant, Emily Lawson, guilty of second-degree murder, child abuse, resulting in death." Gasps filled the courtroom. Sandra burst into tears. The judge called for silence. Emily froze for a moment, still trying to process what she heard. Then she laughed, softly, nervously, like it wasn't real. But when the deputies approached her, the laughter stopped. She whispered, "You can't do this. I'm just a kid." The judge replied coldly, "You are old enough to kill. You are old enough to face justice." For the first time, Emily broke her face. Twisted in panic, she shouted, "No, I didn't mean to, please." But it was too late. The judge ordered her remanded in custody until sentencing. As she was escorted out, she cried out, "I didn't want this. I didn't want this." But the courtroom doors closed behind her, and the echoes of her screams faded down the hall. Outside, reporters captured the crowd, chanting, "Justice for Noah." The video of her breakdown spread online overnight, viewed millions of times. The same girl who once boasted about being untouchable was now a symbol of teenage arrogance gone too far. But this story isn't over, because what happened on sentencing day would shock even the most hardened courtroom observers. The tears, the apology, and the final words from the judge that left everyone silent. February 14th, 2024. The day of sentencing, reporters arrived before sunrise. The courthouse steps were filled with cameras, microphones, and people holding photos of 6-year-old Noah Hill. The public wanted one thing: the justice inside. The tension filled the air. Deputies escorted Emily Lawson into the courtroom. She looked smaller this time, thinner, her hair tied neatly. The smirk she once wore was gone. For the first time since her arrest, she looked scared. The judge entered. Everyone rose. When they sat, you could hear the faint clicks of cameras and the sound of Emily's shackles as she adjusted in her seat. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something, but she didn't respond. She kept her eyes on the floor. The prosecutor began first. She stood, papers in hand, and said, "Your Honor, the gravity of this crime cannot be overstated. A defenseless child lost his life because of uncontrolled rage, and the defendant has shown little remorse until today. We ask for the maximum sentence allowed by law." The words hit hard. The crowd murmured quietly. Sandra Hill, the victim's mother, sat in the front row clutching her son's photo. When it was time for the defense to speak, Emily's lawyer stood slowly. "Your Honor, my client is still a teenager. She has spent her life surrounded by neglect, substance abuse, and poor influence. She understands now the horror of what she's done. She has cried every night in her cell, terrified of what comes next. I ask the court for mercy, not forgiveness, but the chance for rehabilitation." The courtroom waited. All eyes turned to Emily as the judge said, "Miss Lawson, do you wish to address the court before I pass sentence?" Emily stood. Her voice shook. "I know everyone hates me. I hate me too," she said, wiping her eyes. "I didn't mean to kill him. I was angry. I was stupid, and I thought I was above everyone. I wish I could take it all back. I'm sorry to his mom. I'm sorry to everyone." Sandra began to cry quietly. Even some jurors looked down, trying not to meet her eyes, but the judge's face remained stern. He waited until she finished before leaning forward. "Emily Lawson," he said slowly, "you believed your age made you untouchable. You taunted the law. You bragged that no one could arrest you, yet here you stand, not because of your age, but because of your actions. You took an innocent life. And while I acknowledge your youth and your difficult upbringing, this court must protect society and uphold justice." Emily's breathing grew heavier. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, whispering for her to stay calm. The judge continued, "It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 25 years in a state correctional facility. With the possibility of review after 18, you will receive psychological treatment while incarcerated. And upon release, Remain under supervision for 5 additional years. You are to have no contact with the victim's family. The room went silent. Emily blinked rapidly, as if waiting for someone to say it was a mistake. Then her lips trembled. 25 years, she whispered. The judge repeated it firmly. That was the moment it broke her. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing loudly. "Please, I can't do that long, please," she screamed. Deputies rushed to hold her steady. Her cries echoed off the courtroom walls. The judge's gavel came down once. Bang! "Remove the defendant," he ordered. The deputies lifted her up as she continued to cry. "I didn't mean to. I'm sorry." But the courtroom didn't move. No one spoke. Sandra Hill wept into her hands. The cameras caught everything. The girl who once laughed at police, now begging for mercy she would never get. Outside, the media waited. The clip of Emily crying as the sentence was read became one of the most watched videos of the year. Some saw it as justice served. Others saw it as a tragic reminder of how anger, ego can destroy a life before it's even begun. But for Sandra Hill, it wasn't about revenge. It was about peace. "It doesn't bring my son back," she told reporters. "But maybe now, she'll finally understand what she took from us." That night, Emily was transferred to the state correctional facility. She didn't speak during the ride. Her tears had dried. Her reality had begun. And yet, what happened next, just weeks into her sentence, would once again make headlines across the nation. A prison interview no one expected, a confession that changed public opinion, and a truth that left even investigators stunned. 3 weeks after her sentencing, Emily Lawson sat behind a metal table in a small interview room at the state correctional facility. She looked different now, quieter, older somehow. The camera light turned red, and the journalist across from her pressed record. This was the first time Emily had agreed to speak publicly since the trial. At first her answers were short. Yes, no, I don't remember. But as the minutes passed, her guard began to fall. Then she said something that stunned everyone watching the live broadcast. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way," she whispered. "I just wanted to scare him. I didn't mean for him to die." The reporter leaned forward. "Then why did you keep hitting him?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Because he wouldn't stop crying," she said quietly. "And I thought, if I made him quiet, she'd pay attention to me." The room went silent. It was the first time she revealed what investigators had long suspected. The attack wasn't random. It came from jealousy. Emily had been in a toxic relationship with her older girlfriend, and she admitted that she hated how much attention the woman gave to her son instead of her. "I was angry at her, not him," Emily continued, "but he was there, and I lost control." The confession spread across the internet within hours. People were divided, some furious, others saying she needed psychiatric help more than punishment, but everyone agreed on one thing. Hearing her speak made the case even more tragic. When the reporter asked, "Do you think you deserve the 25 years you got?" she nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "Because every time I close my eyes, I see his face, and I know he didn't deserve what I did. Maybe one day I'll forgive myself, but not now." The video ended with her staring at the floor, the chains around her wrists rattling softly. That clip became one of the most emotional moments ever broadcast in a true crime interview. Outside, the victim's mother, Sandra Hill, watched the interview from home. Reporters asked her reaction. She simply said, "At least now she understands. That's all I ever wanted." The case was closed, but the lesson remained. Arrogance, anger, and jealousy can destroy lives in seconds. Emily thought she was untouchable. Now she wakes up every morning behind bars, haunted by the sound of a child's cry she can never silence. The story of Emily Lawson isn't just another teenage crime. It's a warning that no one, no matter how young or bold, stands above the law.